This is a test for the captioning, test 1212 captioning, test 1212.
I call to order 844th meeting of the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The committee will now proceed with agenda item 5, consideration of a report submitted by state parties under Article 35 of the Convention. This afternoon, the committee will begin its consideration of the report of Qatar. I have the honor to warmly welcome the distinguished delegation of Qatar, headed by Her Excellency Dr. Mariam bint Ali Al Misnad, Minister of State for International Cooperation, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I also welcome the representative of the National Human Rights Institution of Qatar participating in the dialogue, Mr. Nasser Marzuku H.S. Al-Mari, Director of the Legal Affairs Department, and Mr. Salim Mohammed A.H. Aradba, Legal Researcher. The task force for Qatar is composed Ms. Rihab Bosley, coordinators, Mr. Abdul Majini Makni, Mr. Muhammad Aljad, Mr. Christopher Ruanor, and Ms. Amalia Camille. Captioning, international sign language, and interpretation in English, French, Spanish, and Arabic are available. This meeting is also webcast on UN Web TV. The consideration of the initial will be held in 2 meetings over 2 consecutive days, each of which will be last for 3 hours. Today's consideration of the report follows a back-to-back round of questions and follow-up questions. Then the delegation will be given the opportunity to respond to those questions and follow-up questions. First, the round of back-to-back questions will address the first cluster of a group of articles of the Convention, Article 1 to 9 and 31 to 33, for 60 minutes with a 15 minutes break, followed by a second round of back-to-back questions on cluster 1 for 30 minutes. Once the first cluster is finished, the first round of back-to-back questions will address the second cluster, Article 10 to 20, for 40 minutes. This will bring us to the close to the first day. Tomorrow we will continue with the round of back-to-back questions for the second cluster and third cluster, Article 21 to 30, following the same structure we had today. Finally, we will close the consideration the initial report of Qatar, with a closing remark from the head of the delegation and the coordinator of the task force. I wish to draw the delegation's attention to the need for careful time management. When the response cannot be provided, the delegation may submit the pending information in writing within 24 hours from the end of dialogue and provide it in Word format. I draw everyone's attention to need for careful time management again. Now I invite the head of delegation to deliver her opening remark. The maximum speaking time is 20 minutes. Your Excellency, Dr. Mariam bint Ali Al Misnad, you have the floor.
Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman. In the name of God Almighty, honorable participants, ladies and gentlemen, may the peace, blessings, and mercy and Allah be upon you. On behalf of the state of Qatar, I would like to greet you and express my happiness to be with you in this interactive dialogue to discuss the combined second to fourth periodic report submitted pursuant to Article 35 of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Before speaking about legislation, policies, and programs, I would like to begin where all our efforts must begin with the human being who deserves to have their dignity protected, their will respected, and opportunities open before them to learn and work, create, participate, decide, and dream, and to live with independence and dignity without disability or the barriers surrounding them turning into constraints on their rights and aspirations. Persons with disabilities are not merely beneficiaries of services, nor a category viewed solely through the lens of need. They are right holders, people of ability and ambition, and full partners in development and building societies and shaping the future. Out of this conviction, the state of Qatar launched its journey towards strengthening and empowering the rights of persons with disabilities. This journey has evolved clearly from care to rights, from the provision of services to the removal of barriers, from protection to empowerment, and from viewing persons with disabilities as beneficiaries to recognizing them as partners. We look with pride at what has been achieved over the past years in terms of legislative, institutional, and societal development as the fruit of national will, institutional cooperation, and partnership with persons with disabilities, their families, and civil society organizations representing them. At the same time, we recognize that true achievement is not measured by the number of laws and programs, but by the extent to which they are reflected in a person's life, by their ability to live independently, to choose to participate and exercise their rights in full. It is in this spirit that we come to our dialogue with your distinguished committee with openness and responsibility to present what has been achieved and at the same time to listen attentively to your observations and recommendations regarding them as an opportunity for evaluation, learning, and continuous improvement. The state of Qatar takes pride in having been among the first states parties to the Convention of the rights of persons with disabilities, and it also takes pride in its role in supporting disability issues at both the national and international levels. The role has been linked to a number of initiatives that have contributed to strengthening the presence of the rights of persons with disabilities on the international agenda. In 2007, the State of Qatar submitted the draft resolution adopted by the UN General Assembly declaring the 2nd of April as World Autism Awareness Day. In 2025, Qatar continued the role by submitting and sponsoring the draft resolution adopted by the General Assembly on the 16th of June 2025, declaring the 27th of June the International Day on Deaf Blindness, thereby enhancing international awareness of the rights of persons with the hearing and visual disabilities and calling for the removal of barriers to their full and effective participation in society. We are also proud of our participation in launching the Global Autism Coalition as an international platform to promote cooperation and the exchange of knowledge and expertise in support of persons with autism and their families, with a focus on diagnosis and early intervention, including education, research, innovation, and technology, employment and economic empowerment, and community participation. Hosting the 4th Global Disability Summit in Doha in 2028 in cooperation with the International Disability Alliance represents a new international milestone in this journey and an embodiment of our commitment to strengthening international partnership and building more inclusive and empowering societies. We also take pride in the historic contribution of the late Her Excellency Sheikha Hissa bint Khalifa bint Ahmed Al Thani, who was the first Qatari woman to hold UN Special Procedures mandate and the first woman to serve as Special Rapporteur on Disability during the period 2003 through 2009. Her contribution constituted a bright page in the presence of Qatari women in the UN system and international efforts to promote the rights of persons with disabilities and mainstream and disability perspective in policies and programs. At the regional level, the State of Qatar, during its presidency at the 42nd session of the Council of Arab Ministers of Social Affairs, supported a number of initiatives, most notably the Arab Decade of Persons with Disabilities 2032 and the Arab Classification of Persons with Disabilities. This classification represents an important step towards unifying concepts, classifications, and data related to disability in the Arab region by combining the medical perspective with the social and environmental perspective, thereby supporting the development of more consistent and comparable databases and contributing to the enhanced implementation of Article 31 of the Convention, which emphasizes the importance of collecting data and using them in the formulation of policies and the assessment of their impact. We also continue to support Gulf and Arab initiative aimed at enhancing social inclusion, including the Purple Saturday initiative, which contributes to promoting the participation of persons with disabilities and encouraging commercial and service institutions to provide more inclusive and accessible environment. Distinguished members of the committee, our dialogue today takes place in an important context, 20 years after the adoption of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and more than a decade after the consideration of the State of Qatar's initial report before your distinguished committee in 2015. The concluding observations and recommendations issued at the time constituted an important reference for national entities and contributed to guiding the process of developing legislation policies and programs. Today, we can say that the state of Qatar has witnessed a qualitative transformation in its national system related to the rights of persons with disabilities, legislatively, institutionally, strategically, and societally. This development is based on a solid constitutional foundation. The permanent constitution of the state of Qatar affirms in Article 35 that people are equal before the law without discrimination, a principle that applies to citizens and residents on the territory of the state. Proceeding from this principle, the state provides health, education, and rehabilitation services to persons with disabilities on an equal basis while taking into account their individual needs. Among the most prominent milestones of legislative development is the issuance of Law 22 of 2025 on the rights of persons with disabilities, which represents an important leap in the national system. The law is not limited to regulating services. It enshrines an approach based on rights, empowerment, equality, and non-discrimination. It strengthens the right to reasonable accommodation and accessibility, inclusive education, health and rehabilitation, work, housing, social protection, independent living, and full participation in society. It also strengthens protection from neglect, abuse, exploitation, and violence, guarantees participation in cultural, sporting, recreational, and public life, provides for the establishment of unified national database, and includes guarantees and penalties to protect the rights set out therein. At the institutional level, the state of Qatar has witnessed important developments in the structure of the Ministry of Social Development and Family pursuant to Amiri Decision number 43 of 2022 and Ministerial Decision 24 of 2024, which enhanced the clarity of competences and responsibilities related to persons with disabilities. The National Committee on the Affairs of Women, Children, Older Persons, and Persons with Disabilities was also established pursuant to Council of Ministers Decision number 26 of 2019 with the participation of 15 governmental and non-governmental entities to strengthen national coordination and follow up on the implementation of relevant international obligations. Madam Chair, the principle of leaving no one behind is not a slogan for the state of Qatar. It is part of its national vision and developmental priorities. This has been reflected in a number of national strategies and plans, including the strategy of the Ministry of Social Development and Family 2025-2030, the third National Health Strategy 2024-2030, and the National Autism Action Plan 2026-2030. The National Human Rights Action Plan, which the state is working to adopt, also includes a broad space for strengthening the rights of persons with disabilities in accordance with the principles of universality, interrelatedness, and indivisibility of right. The state of Qatar is likewise working to adopt a national strategy for persons with disabilities to serve as an integrated national framework for coordinating efforts, strengthening institutional capacities, and establishing clear indicators for measuring progress and impact. If legislation sets the framework, investment in the human being is what turns rights into reality. It is precisely for this reason that the state of Qatar has devoted great attention to specialized services, capacity building, and community awareness. The Qatar Foundation for Social Work and its affiliated centers, foremost among them the Shafallah Center for Persons with Disabilities and the Noor Center for the Blind, together with the Assistive Technology Center MADA and the Qatar Society for the Rehabilitation of Special Needs, play an important role in providing education, rehabilitation, assistive technology, protection, and community inclusion services. Education is the first gateway to empowerment. Therefore, we are working to strengthen inclusive education and provide support according to the individual needs of students with disabilities. The strategy of the Ministry of Education and Higher Education 2024-2030 includes a strategic objective related to empowering students with disabilities and enhancing their access to and participation participation in education. Government schools are also working to provide inclusive, safe, and accessible educational environments alongside individual education plans, assistive technologies and devices, and the strengthening of the capacities of teachers and specialties. The Ministry of Education and Higher Education is working in partnership with the Ministry of Public Health to develop a system of early detection, assessment, early intervention, and rehabilitation. The state has launched for this reason Al Juwan Kindergarten for Early Intervention, with a partnership aimed at providing integrated services for children with disabilities and supporting their gradual transition to inclusive educational environments. The Ministry of Education and Higher Education, in cooperation with the Qatar Foundation, also launched the Warif Academy in 2025, the first school in Qatar dedicated to students with severe and multiple educational disabilities, providing specialized educational and rehabilitative services that respond to the needs of its students. The State of Qatar also promotes social participation through initiatives such as the All Abilities Programs of Qatar Foundation, which provides sports and recreational activities for children and adults with disabilities, thereby enhancing health, participation, and social inclusion. As for health and rehabilitation, they are the foundations for preserving dignity and enhancing independence. Qatar is committed to ensuring that persons with disabilities have access to health services on an equal basis, while providing the specialized and rehabilitative services required by their needs. These efforts include early detection and intervention, medical, psychological, and social rehabilitation, mental health, assistive devices and technologies, and support for families and caregivers. The state has also developed prosthetic and orthotic services through an integrated pathway that includes assessment, prescription, custom manufacturing using modern technologies, fitting, and follow-up. These services recorded 25,064 visits during 2025. The state continues to develop multidisciplinary services, improve coordination between levels of healthcare, and enhance accessibility to health facilities, information, and services. Madam Chair, empowerment is incomplete without economic independence. Thus, national legislation guarantees the right of persons with disabilities to work on the basis of equal opportunity, including employment promotion, equal pay, training, and career development. It also guarantees reasonable accommodation, the adaptation of suitable work environments, and mechanisms for grievance and redress. National legislation do not discriminate between persons on the basis of sex or disabilities in the exercise of economic activities, and the state provides certain facilities and privileges, including the reduction or exemption of some fees in support and encouragement of persons with disabilities. The state continues to develop data related to employment, unemployment, and working conditions, and to enhance the participation of women with disabilities in the labor market, thereby supporting their economic independence and participation in development. Madam Chair, distinguished members of the committee, accessibility is not a privilege, it's a precondition for the exercise of rights. For this reason, the State of Qatar attaches special importance to the accessibility of the built environment, means of transportation, information and communication, the digital services, in addition to employing assistive technology to remove barriers. I personally had the honor of working with the brother Faisal Al-Koji through Disability Champions Group on the Accessible Qatar for All initiative concerned with assessing the physical accessibility standards of buildings. I'm pleased that he is with us today as part of the delegation of the State of Qatar, my colleague Faisal, which embodies the importance of the participation of persons with disabilities themselves in evaluating the policies and practices that affect their lives. The FIFA World Cup Qatar 2022 tournament constituted an advanced model in the application of the principles of universal design and accessibility through the preparation of stadiums, means of transport, and fan zones, the provision of audio description, sign language interpretation, and sensory rooms for persons with autism spectrum disorder, as well as the training of volunteers and staff. This experience contributed to the establishment of sustainable legacy that extended to the transport, tourism, sports, and public services sectors. On the digital front, the Meda Center plays a pioneering role in enhancing digital accessibility and developing assistive technology. These efforts have contributed to achieving a digital accessibility rate of 94% across government websites and to supporting the State of Qatar in achieving 5th place globally in the Digital Accessibility Rights Evaluation Index. The MEDA Innovation Program has also contributed to supporting 64 innovations and launching 25 solutions in the market. In the same context, the Ministry of Social Development and Family launched the National Digital Platform YUSR to facilitate the access of persons with disabilities and their families to relevant services and information in accordance with digital accessibility standards. We continue to mainstream the rights of persons with disabilities in digital transformation and AI policies while ensuring that the principles of accessibility, universal design, and non-bias are part of the development of systems from their earliest stages. Madam Chair, in crises and emergencies, our responsibility increases. International experience has shown that persons with disabilities may face greater risks in their needs if their needs are not taken into account from the earliest stages of planning and response. We support through our humanitarian and developmental institutions the programs that respond to the needs of persons with disabilities in the field of education, health, rehabilitation, protection, and basic services. The commitment of the State of Qatar to the rights of persons with disabilities does not stop at its national borders, but it extends to its international cooperation in line with Article 32 of the Convention. Through the Qatar Fund for Development, we have implemented direct projects to support and empower persons with disabilities exceeding 98 million US dollars. Foremost among these efforts is the Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani Hospital for Rehabilitation and Prosthetics in the Gaza Strip, which since its opening in 2019 has provided over 585,000 rehabilitation sessions and services to approximately 65,000 beneficiaries. In order to institutionalize this approach, the State Fund of Qatar for Development is working to adopt a unified methodology for mainstreaming a disability perspective in its programs. For us, international cooperation is not merely the provision of assistance, it's a partnership in dignity, opportunity, and rights. Madam Chair, distinguished members of the committee, what has been achieved, we take pride in, and what has not yet been achieved, we are committed to achieving. The State of Qatar does not claim that the journey to implementing the convention has been complete. Rights are on an ongoing journey, challenges change, and empowerment is a continuous process. In conclusion, we are taking pride in what we are doing out of a deep conviction that this is not an end to itself, but a means. We have learned during this journey that real empowerment does not mean only the provision of services, but removing a barrier. It does not mean merely opening a door, but ensuring that this door is accessible to all. It does not mean merely talking about persons with disabilities, but ensuring that their voice is present, their opinion is heard, their choices is respected, and their role is active in the decisions that affect them. We believe that each child with a disability would dream without limits, for every young man and woman would learn, work, and build their future without independence, and every person with a disability would participate in public, cultural, sporting, and social life, and for a voice to be an integral part of decision making. This is the essence of our journey. We look forward to a frank, objective, and constructive dialogue with your distinguished committee. We have ensured that the delegation of the State of Qatar includes representatives of the various relevant national entities so as to provide accurate and comprehensive answers to your inquiries. We reaffirm once again that the State of Qatar will give your concluding observations and recommendations its full attention and will work to study, disseminate, and discuss them with the competent national entities and take the necessary measures to follow up on their implementation. Allow me in conclusion to renew on behalf of the State of Qatar our deep respect and appreciation for every person with disability, every family that has stood by our side, and every institution, worker, and volunteer that has contributed to opening a new path before them. Thank you, Madam Chair and distinguished members, for your kind attention. May the peace, blessings, and mercy of Allah be upon you all.
Your Excellency, as a representative of the committee, I thank you for your introductory statement. I now give the floor to the National Human Rights Institution of Qatar. Mr. Nasser Marzuko H.S. Al-Mari and Mr. Salem Muhammad A.H. Al-Atiba are participating. You have the maximum of 5 minutes. You have the floor.
سيد الرئيس أصحاب السعادة
Madam Chairperson,
Committee members, ladies and gentlemen. The Human Rights Commission in Qatar is a national independent institution holding A status in line with the Paris Principles. It is a pleasure for us to participate in this dialogue on the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The National Commission welcomes the significant legislative progress made in Qatar through the enactment of Law 2022 of 2025. This is a law related to persons with disabilities. This is a step forward to ensure that the national legislative framework is in line with the provisions of the Convention. This law has adopted a human rights-based approach. The law restates the principles of non-discrimination, reasonable accommodation, accessibility, including digital accessibility. In terms of participation, the law has provided greater legal protection to persons with disabilities. The Commission welcomes the progress made in the field of data and statistics, and thus we have a national database which is based on the results of the national census. We have disaggregated indicators based on gender, age, nationality, and difficulties related to one's function. This has allowed for the adoption of policies based on proof and evidence. The National Human Rights Commission believes that during the next phase, we will need to go even further than legislative developments. We will need to move to the practical and effective realization of rights. And to do so, we will need to publish the implementing regulations of the law and strengthen oversight and monitoring mechanisms. The Commission would like to draw your attention to two areas which require further work. I'll start out with accessibility. There are standards and very advanced legislation in this respect. However, there is a need to improve the respect of those norms and legislation. We would need to have national quantifiable indicators. We would need to publish data regularly when it comes to accessibility to buildings, public transport, and digital services in line with Article 9 of the Convention. The second point relates to the right to work and economic empowerment. Efforts have been undertaken to enhance the employment of persons with disabilities. However, we would need to have lasting labour opportunities. There needs to be reasonable accommodation in the workplace. Also, data on employment, unemployment, and sustainable employment are important. This will make it possible to assess the headway made and to deal with existing gaps. By way of conclusion, the National Human Rights Commission restates the importance of undertaking further efforts so as to incorporate persons with disabilities and organisations representing them into the drafting of policies and decisions related to them in accordance with the principle of nothing about us without us. We would also need to strengthen implementation and oversight mechanisms in accordance with the Convention. I wish to thank you for your attention, and we would like to continue cooperation with your committee so as to promote and bolster the rights of persons with disabilities. I thank you.
Thank you so much for your contribution. We will now proceed with Cluster 1, covering Article 1 to 9 and Article 31 to 33 of the Convention. This segment will continue until 4:30 p.m. There are 5 members of Task Force of Qatar, Ms. Rehab Bosley, Mr. Abdelmajid Makni, Mr. Muhannad Al-Azhar, Mr. Christopher Nuanor, and Ms. Amalia Camille. I will first invite the member of the task force to raise their question in accordance with the agreed article allocation. After each set of the question, questions, I will alert the distinguished delegation to response. I ask both committee members and the delegation to keep their interventions focused so that all questions can be addressed within the available time. Ms. Reha Bosley, I now give you the floor for the task force opening remark and the first set of questions covering Article 1 to 8 and Article 33. You have the floor.
Mic is not working. It's working? Okay. شكرا السيدة الرئيسة. بسم الله الرحمن.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. May the peace of God be with you. I would like to warmly welcome the high-level delegation of Qatar, and I would like to welcome those who are coming from the universities of London and the University of Sorbonne. I'd like to express our condolences related to the departure of Mr. Hanamari. We've lost a regional and international leader. We will begin our dialogue right now. Qatar has made a significant stride forward. The fourth conference on disabilities will take place in 2028. Qatar is a country that is close to my heart. It is where I studied and I worked. And also the World Cup took place in Qatar. We have our common heritage, we have friends, we have relatives in Qatar. We will now start with Articles 1 through 8 and Article 33. Now, Articles 9, 14, Mr. Aliziz, Articles 15, 20, Ms. Gamil, and Articles 21, 26. It is Mr. Christopher Nuanoro, and Articles 27, 32, Mr. Makni will be looking at those. So I'll start with the general obligations, Articles 1 through 4. We have looked at the reports that have been presented. We have the third strategy for development 2024-2030. We're now in the second phase of the implementation of the strategy 2026. I'd like to find out what were the initiatives that are launched as part of this initiatives related to persons with disabilities. What are the objectives related to employment, economic situation, and also what are the political developments related to disabilities over the last 5 years? What is the proportion of national budget that is allocated to national institutions that work for the cause of persons with disabilities, from the Al-Shawara Center, the Center for Social Activities, and the ACNUR Institute for the Blind? I'd like to find out what are the criteria that were adopted to choose donors and sponsors, and how do you identify persons with disabilities who are not from Qatar, especially migrant workers? You have not talked about this issue in your report. As far as the additional protocol is concerned, you have said that the convention doesn't oblige the country to accede to the protocol, but accession will show that the state is interested in persons as well as especially persons with disabilities, and that the state is taking all the efforts to implement the conventions. This covers the possibility to launch complaints in connection with violations. Could you please review and reconsider your position vis-a-vis the protocol? What do you mean when you talk about an approach that is based on a very careful review when it comes to the adoption of the protocol. Now, we looked at the legislation related to disabilities. There's a gap between legislative text and implementation. In other words, persons with disabilities and organizations of civil society were not included in the process of the preparation, consultations, and preparation of laws. These are the persons that are that benefit from the law when they're published in the official journal. And we know that some individuals are opposed to the principles, nothing is done without us. And we know that if persons with disabilities are not involved, some things will be overlooked. Law number 2022 of 225, following the 2004 law, there was a significant gap in time before amendments were introduced, and it was necessary to integrate persons with disabilities and organizations that they represent. What are the modifications introduced in legislation and the constitution related to the terminology used in terms of disabilities, in order to move away from medical approach and move towards a human rights-based approach? All of this with the need to respect the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Now I'd like to turn to the following article, Article 5, Equality and Non-Discrimination. You're talking about the principle of equality, and you say that the Constitution guarantees this right to equality for all, but persons with disabilities require specific legislative provisions because they have been discriminated, and this is why we do have this convention. I'd like to find out what progress was achieved to promulgate laws to combat discrimination. In paragraph 41, you talk about the support provided to private institutions. At the same time, you know that it is the state that should realize the laws that are enshrined, the rights that are enshrined in the convention. How do you evaluate the rights of persons with disabilities as part of the 2040 Qatar Vision program? I'm looking forward to your replies. In paragraph 43, you talk about different proposals and drafts. I'd like to find out whether that work has been done. In the same paragraph, you talk about governmental institutions and non-governmental institutions that must respect the convention. You talk about the tribunals in the country that ensure respect for the convention. I'd like to find out how the state guarantees this oversight in practice. In your report, you have not said how organizations of persons with disabilities participate in the preparation of programs and policies that relate to their rights. The relevant Human Rights Committee have made recommendations related to the draft law on the rights of persons with disabilities. I'd like to find out what are the mechanisms that guarantee the participation of persons with disabilities. Now, on the on question 4 in the list of issues, are you envisaging to adopt a law to combat discrimination? And this relates to discrimination against persons with disabilities. Are you planning to establish a mechanism related to complaints, compensation, and remedies? Now, on 4B, you talked about 23 laws that protect persons with disabilities. Can you provide us with a list of all of these laws? Now, on 4C, we have not understood what is the situation related to denial of reasonable accommodation. Does this mean that there's a discrimination against persons with disabilities? Please clarify this point. Now, there's a recent law, 2022-25, but that law does not talk about persons with disabilities who are non-Qatari citizens. We talked about children of migrant workers that face accidents at the workplace or during their stay in Qatar. What are the rights of these persons, these children, in terms of employment and social protection? Now, in your replies to the list of issues, you said that the Constitution in Chapter 2, Article 18 and 19 related to the foundations of society say that the Constitution has established the framework for non-discrimination, something that covers persons with disabilities. In line with this constitutional principle, I'd like to find out what is the number of persons with disabilities or organizations that represent them that took part in the process of the preparation and elaboration of law number 22. What is the number of persons with disabilities that occupy high-level positions in the government? What is the proportion of women? Can you provide us with information on older persons in institutions? The report does not refer to that. Would like to find out what the competencies of the National Human Rights Commission related to discrimination against persons with disabilities. Is it possible to launch complaints? Now, that was Article 6, and now I'd like to refer to Article 6.
تقريركم ورد ردا على الفقرة الخامسة ألف.
Now, in your report, you replied to question 5I. The Housing Directorate provides persons in unfavorable positions with housing. What is the percentage of persons with disabilities, and are these housing facilities adapted to the needs of persons with disabilities? Now, in paragraph 53, you respond to issue 5B. You say that women and girls with disabilities benefit from the same rights as men, but you did not mention any different forms of discrimination or multiple forms of discrimination that women face. Could you please provide some additional clarifications? In paragraph 53, you state that the Commission on Women, Older Persons, and Persons with Disabilities in charge of protecting the rights of these categories. What are the measures taken by the Commission to protect these rights? You also said that the Commission makes proposals related to amendments to bring national legislation in line with international law. Now, is this also applied to your law on disability, and what were the amendments that were introduced? The gender equality policy in Qatar, based on equality in obligations and rights between men and women, and involves combating discrimination against women and ensure that women can access positions of leadership. I'd like to find out what other measures are taken to protect women, especially to combat domestic violence. What are the prevention campaigns that specifically relate to any complaints presented by women with disabilities? Now, are oversight mechanisms ensure effective follow-up to investigate cases of violence against women? Do these mechanisms guarantee non-repetition? My question is related to the fact that Qatar has seen an economic and social boom over the last 2 decades that, of course, had an impact on the living conditions and social conditions. And women represent about half of the population. And we look at your delegation and we see that women play a very important role. Now, is that also reflected in terms of the situation of women with disabilities, their role, the quotas in the employment market, especially in the private sector? What is the situation in terms of strengthening the rights of women with disabilities in the economic and political sphere? Article 7, children with disabilities. The replies provided in paragraph 62 to 71 state that the opinion and views of persons with disabilities are taken into account related to education of children and adolescents with disabilities. This is an objective reply, but I'd like to find out whether the specific measures taken by Qatar to integrate children with disabilities to participate in decisions that relate to them, despite the fact that Qatar has made significant investments in high quality health services. There are still concerns that relate to the existence in terms of prevention and early intervention to deal with potential disabilities. I do not question in any way. Clinics and hospitals are excellent in Qatar, but I'd like to find out what are the measures taken by Qatar and that contribute to the proper implementation of the convention. Now, do children with disabilities related to complications during their birth or during their early years, now, do these children receive continued monitoring? And they also need specific follow-up. Do they receive special support? We also would like to find out about the possibility to guarantee a normal growth of children that have become disabled during the first years after being born. Now, do they go to centers that provide rapid and urgent support services? Qatar has a program that takes care of children that are suffering disabilities as a result of their birth. How are these problems identified and what treatments are provided? How are these children and are they transferred to more specialized services? Now, have you registered the number of such cases in order to have a relevant database that can help carry out scientific research? Other concerns relate to social services specifically related to children with disabilities. It seems that specialized social assistance working with children with disabilities and their families where there's a psychological monitoring, there's a limited number of such help workers, and there's also overlap with purely medical support services. So apparently there is a gap in terms of training social helpers in this area. I'd like to find out what is the number of social helpers that are specialized in disabilities. How are they trained in order to work with children with disabilities? To what measures families with children with disabilities provide support to these social helpers, and how is their work evaluated? Article 8 related to awareness raising. I'd like to find out what I'm looking at paragraphs 73.
Allow me that I would like to give the floor to the state party delegation to address the first set of your question. And then after that, would you continue question of the Article 8 and 33? Because there are too many questions from you now. So I would like to give the floor to delegation. And then after that, we should give the question, Article 8 and 30. What you want. Yes, thank you so much. So I would like to give the floor to the delegation to respond.
شكرا السيد الرئيس. أرجو من أعضاء
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to ask the members of the delegation to introduce themselves and to reply to the questions raised. On behalf of God, the Merciful, the Almighty, we have the permanent representative for the mission of Qatar in Geneva, Hind Al-Mufta, as regards the measures taken to ratify the optional protocol. This issue related to the accession to the optional protocol is still under review by the competent authorities in accordance with our national procedures. As to measures taken to move from a charitable to an approach which recognizes the fully fledged rights of persons with disabilities, well, all of our laws have undergone a gradual transformation. We have moved from a medical and aid approach to an approach which recognizes the rights and prohibits discrimination. Law 22 of 2025 has enshrined those rights. In fact, persons with disabilities are no longer subjects of aid, if you will, but they benefit from rights on the same footing as all citizens. This law was proposed to the National Human Rights Committee and to all competent authorities, as well as persons and organizations representing persons with disabilities, so as to gather together their views on that law. Following that, we consulted other authorities and we have taken the comments into account, which meant that we have worked towards implementing that law together with an international convention. This law has adopted a definition of persons with disabilities, particularly when it comes to the type of disability and the sustainability of the disability. The law also provides for the prohibition of discrimination on the basis of disability. It guarantees an opportunity for all persons with disabilities. It improves reasonable accommodation, and their deprivation is considered to be a form of discrimination. The law also provides for the protection in all areas of life. It facilitates accessibility to all buildings, communication and IT services. It also guarantees the participation of persons with disabilities in social activities, protection from violence. It guarantees participation in the sports, leisure activities, and it also provides for the establishment of a unified database, and it sanctions all persons who contravene this law 22. The state is pursuing the monitoring of that law and the establishment of mechanisms which make it possible to oversee implementation in coordination with the competent authorities. We have also drawn up a classification of persons with disabilities. We have reviewed the policies when it comes to healthcare, work and accommodation. We've improved reasonable accommodation and accessibility standards. We have trained human rights officials and officials in human rights, and we have incorporated all persons with disabilities in all programs and social, cultural and sports life. We have set indicators so as to assess the progress made when it comes to empowerment. We would ask, please, the speaker to slow down. Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I am a member of the Supreme Court of the Judiciary. When it comes to discrimination based on disability and the repealment of the provisions which featured previously in our law, we would like to reaffirm today that we believe that non-discrimination and equality are the two principles upon which our Constitution is founded. This applies to Qataris or citizens and persons with disabilities, as well as to non-Qataris. When it comes to ensuring that our laws are in line with the Convention, Law 22 was adopted to protect the rights of persons with disabilities. This law has adopted a human rights-based approach and is in accordance with the provisions of the CRPD. Law 22 has replaced Law 2 of 2024. Article 2 of the law states that persons with disabilities benefit from all rights and liberties on the same footing as other citizens. Law 22 prohibits all forms of discrimination on the basis of a disability, and the deprivation of reasonable accommodation in and of itself represents discrimination. Article 29 of that law provides for the full protection of persons with disabilities and equality before the law, as well as the exercise of all of their rights. When it comes to ensuring that this law is in line with the Constitution, we are continuing to review all laws which relate to the protection of our citizens. We're working towards repealing all laws which may be discriminatory against persons with disabilities. Turning now to the issue about the integration of persons with disabilities into the 2030 vision, I would like to give the floor to my colleague from the Ministry of Development.
مدير إدارة الرعاية المجتمعية بوزارة التنمية الاجتماعية والأسرة. انطلاقا من رؤية قطر الوطنية 2030 تبنت دولة قطر نهجا يقوم على التنمية الشاملة وتكافؤ الفرص.
Now, as regards the Qatari Vision 2030, our approach is based on equal opportunities. I would request the members of the delegation to speak at a more reasonable pace so that the interpreters can follow. Thank you very much. As regards the Qatari Vision 2030, the other related strategies, for example, the Qatar Plan for Autism, 2017 to 2027, we have adopted an approach which is based on the overall development and equal opportunities. We wanted to incorporate the rights of persons with disabilities in all societal or sectoral plans, and the aim is to guarantee their participation in social activities. This approach is based on national laws, including the law on persons with disabilities, which compels the competent authorities to fully protect the rights of persons with disabilities and to incorporate them in all national strategies. The third national strategy, 2024-2030, is considered to be a framework setting measures which can be taken to guarantee overall development, equal opportunities, an acceptable standard of living and quality of life, to incorporate persons with disabilities into national priorities. This is reflected in all national strategies. For instance, at the societal level, the Ministry for Social Development has adopted a national strategy, 2025-2030. This covers or attaches priority to building an overall society which fully takes account of persons with disabilities. We also wish to develop social services provided to persons with disabilities. The state is working towards developing a national strategy which is specific to persons with disabilities. The aim is to better coordinate strategies protecting them and to better implement the convention.
الصحة وزارة الصحة العامة. في قطاع الصحة.
In the field of health, the National Strategy for Health 2018-2022 concentrated on the health of persons with disabilities, diagnosis and early warning and rehabilitation. This has continues in the third National Strategy 2024-2030, while giving special attention to persons with disabilities and integrating them in a number of other health initiatives. The National Strategy for Autism 2026-2030 came in continuation of the previous strategy 2017-2021 as the multidisciplinary approach for diagnosis, early detection, coordination between the authorities concerned. Ministry of Education. In the field of education, this has been part of the strategy of the Ministry of Education and Higher Education 2024-2030 in order to empower students with disabilities in a number of initiatives to improve initiatives that aim at supporting inclusive education, developing educational services, assistive educational services, and providing the educational environments that are appropriate to them, and to enable students with disabilities to achieve a high quality education. Regarding budgets, the programs and initiatives related to persons with disabilities.
Kindly suggest to keep your response follow up the Ms. Rehabosley's questions.
كملي إجابتك ولكن عشان
You can continue, but please raise your voice and speak at a slower pace so that interpreters and sign language interpreters could follow you. Programs and initiatives for persons with disabilities in order to provide annual budgets, each in its according to its competence, in accordance with the relevant initiatives on education, health, rehabilitation, and social services. There are also resources to support the institutions of persons with disabilities in order to achieve the sustainabilities of services and programs. Hence, the approach followed by the state of Qatar aims to meet the needs of persons with disabilities in a national planning institution, and the sectoral strategies, programs, and budgets, and not dealing with disabilities as the responsibility of one sector in order to achieve the unified national vision of Qatar 2030. If you allow me, members of the delegation, please refer to the article you are addressing so that the answers are clear and are relevant to the questions that had been asked by Mrs. Rehabosley. Article 4.1 regarding the measures taken to address persons with disabilities that are not Qatari, especially migrant workers, and their rights in accordance with the CRPD. We adopt a number of unified procedures to identify the disability and the relevant employment and health needs for Qataris and non-Qataris alike. The outcomes of those assessments are being documented, as well as the diagnosis in the health registries, as well as the referral to the relevant authorities and services. The relevant information are being documented in Cerner, our electronic medical registry, including demographic information, and they are being identified in accordance with the nationality and disability. Our state recognizes the rights of persons with disabilities among non-Qataris, including incoming workers, in order to achieve the relevant healthcare and rehabilitation service, as well as protection and access to services. information reflect the fact that residents are fully benefiting from such services. In 2025, 6,200 cases have benefited from the societal rehabilitation services of the Hamad Medical Institution, as well as 4,331 residents, including 70% of the total number of beneficiaries, and there are 4,586 patients who have benefited from rehabilitation programs during the same year. Non-Qataris constitute 62% thereof. Thank you. Now I give the floor to my colleague Faisal, who himself has a visual disability. I am a senior consultant in the petroleum company of the North. I would like to speak with you about my personal experience on the participation of persons with disabilities in decision-making in Qatar. During the last years, a tangible development has been witnessed in the state's approach towards the participation of persons with disabilities. They are no longer beneficiaries from policies and programs, but an integral part and partners in the discussions and preparations. And regarding the law, they are taking part, be they citizens or residents, and they enjoy legal protection and the basic services in accordance with the national legislation without any discrimination. The participation of persons with disabilities has not been confined to reviewing the laws. A number of persons with disabilities, myself included, have taken part in sessions in order to draft a national plan of the rights of persons with disabilities in the plans 2026-2030 in cooperation with the National Committee of persons with disabilities in Qatar, as well as the Noor Center for persons with visual disabilities. These discussions have witnessed expressing opinions regarding human rights issues that have been subsequently referred to the competent authorities. And there is the Qatar Center that enables persons with visual disabilities locally and regionally, and in accordance with the center's objective of removing the obstacles facing these persons, we attempt to convey the voices of our members to the competent authorities through consultative sessions and other periodic meetings. Out of our belief in the importance that persons with disabilities are heard and integrated, we urge them to express their opinions and everything that has to do with policies and strategies that are related to them, which enhances this strategy when these remarks are taken into account through the center. Myself and a number of other persons with disabilities have drafted the strategy on cultural enrichment and sports excellence. We have been including persons with disabilities as well as the legislative authority that has organized a number of visits in cooperation with the University of Qatar, including some persons with disabilities that have viewed the mechanism of the work of the council and attending its session and discussing with the competent authorities. I personally had the opportunity, along with other persons with disabilities from the organizations of persons with disabilities, together with the Social Affairs Committee in charge of persons with disabilities. A number of challenges and opportunities have been discussed that face persons with disabilities so that the committee could take decisions in this respect. I would also like to stress on my personal personal participation, as well as other persons with disabilities and relevant organizations in the Shura Consultative Council sessions, in which the draft law of on the rights of persons with disabilities has been integrated and taken into account before this bill has been referred to the distinguished government. As for our participation in the strategies of persons with disabilities, I would like to point out that we took part in the meeting on identifying the strategy of persons with disability that is currently being under preparation in cooperation with the MEDA Center that includes a number of persons with different disabilities, where we discussed a number of projects that the strategy will include, in addition to expressing our opinions in this respect. Our role, the role of the state of Qatar, has not been confined to including persons with disabilities, but their participation as members of official delegations of state parties of persons with disabilities. A number of persons with different disabilities, including the visual disabilities and autism and others from the state of Qatar, have taken part in the Conference of States Parties on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2021 that has witnessed the expression of interest of the state of Qatar to host the Conference of Persons with Disabilities in 2028. We have taken part in a number of regional workshops, including one that has been organized by the GCC in May 2026 on the enforcement of the CRPD and the preparation of relevant reports. All these efforts and all these engagements, including my personal engagement with these institutions regionally and internationally, reinforce nothing about us without us. Now, we give information about Article number 5, the legislation and policies that protect persons with disabilities from discrimination. Our Constitution calls upon putting an end to discrimination and providing equality before the law. The law number 22 of 2025 on the persons with disabilities provide all forms of provisions to combat discrimination on the basis of a disability and provides equality of opportunities. We give due attention to women and girls with disabilities. The competent authorities include their needs in the national policies and programs, and provides educational, health, and social, as well as social protection services to them without discrimination. The penal law number 10 of 2004 provides for criminal protection from all forms of violence, abuse, and neglect, including women and girls with disabilities, for none of them to be left behind. We have an integrated policy that provides a primary and a specialized health care to persons with disabilities, as well as psychosocial support in order for persons with disabilities to live an independent, high-quality life. As for older persons who live in care institutions, the state of Qatar does not adopt a policy of institutionalization, but rather encourages societal and family care as the first option, while providing long-term health care if needed through the specialized health facilities as per Article 27 of the Persons of Disabilities.
Firstly, please continue with your question on Article 8 and 33. Please within the 2 minutes. I'm sorry.
Articles 8 and what?
33.
8 and 33. Article 8 on raising awareness. We would like to know if the procedures in Articles 73 to 75 are being implemented on an ongoing basis or just sporadically, and how do they enhance awareness raising. We have heard, for example, of booklets being distributed in Braille and other accessible formats. As for the training of government officials, how many have been trained on the rights of persons with disabilities? How frequent do awareness-raising campaigns and audio-visual means, as well as newspapers, how often do they take place? You mentioned that Islamic Affairs Ministry has 77 persons with disabilities. How many are they now? How have they been rehabilitated? And what do they do exactly? What are their professional functions? In Article 80, in the list of issues, you stated that shortly a number of initiatives will be launched in order to enhance financial and technical resources in order to enhance respect and awareness of persons with disabilities. Have such initiatives been carried out indeed, and what are the outcomes achieved so far? Article 4B of the list of issues on raising awareness of the rights of persons with disabilities and them reaching results. For example, the civil defense law contained content on raising the awareness of persons with disabilities, and Article 3 of Disability Law number 22 of 2025, Item 3, addressed awareness-raising campaigns on persons with disabilities, which enhances their integration in society and reduces discrimination and negative practices against them, and in particular against women and girls with disabilities. How many awareness-raising campaigns have been taking place to do so through the official mass media, audio, and visual, in order to accept, not exclude, and to respect persons with disabilities? Has the content of such campaigns in favor of persons with psychosocial disabilities been included? What are the television programs that include the visual description for visually impaired persons? Article 15 of the same law of 2025 describes the facilities that have taken place in order to encourage persons with disabilities to take part in sports and leisure activities, and to translate them, for example, into Braille and to spread the use of sign language. Would you please let us know of the number of sign language interpreters in government circles and the reasonable accommodation measures that have been taken in favor of persons with psychosocial and mental disabilities for them to read more easily and understand more accessibly, and in order to overcome stereotypes in daily life, in order to put an end to discrimination against persons with disabilities? What are the projects that have been carried out by the state party to achieve societal integration in sports and cultural fields, in schools, as well as early detection of the disability, and to change the stereotypes of persons with disabilities, and to turn it from compassion into active participation and interaction. In the report of the state, please provide information on the accessibility that has been adopted by the Supreme Council of the Judiciary and the guidance given to judicial and administrative employees for the persons with disabilities to have access to justice.
Limited time, so would you please make your question short, and then please give the question about the Article 33 immediately.
أنا راح أختصر وأخلص. كما
I will be brief. I'd like to find out what are the strategies that were adopted by the religious leaders, magistrates, and members of the council in order to improve knowledge related or knowledge about the conventions. And you talked about the work carried out by the Ministry of Social Affairs, and you talked about the Supreme Council of the Magistrate. All of this I'm asking is in order to ensure that there's a guarantee of effective access by persons with disabilities to the judiciary. I'd like to find out what is being done by religious leaders, members of the Sharia, to improve knowledge about the conventions. You referred to the Minister of Islamic Affairs and the Supreme Council. What are the other institutions? What do they do? Article 33, I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Mr. Al-Mahri.
So, Mr. Abdul Majini, you have the floor.
نظرا لطول الأسئلة التي وضعت أتيح الفرصة.
They were very long questions that were asked. I think it'll be better for us to listen to the answers will be provided by the delegations right now, and I'll come back to Article 33 later, if you allow me, Madam Chair.
أرجو من أعضاء الوفد إجابة على.
Thank you. I would like to ask members of the delegation to respond to questions related to raising awareness. I give the floor to the Ministry of Health. I apologize. The Ministry of Education corrects herself, the speaker.
فيما يتعلق بالبند رقم 15 مادة 8.
On Article 8, strategies that were adopted in the area of education and everything related to awareness raising in connection with the convention. I'd like to say that we have a global strategy for raising awareness. The Ministry of Education is involved in awareness raising, ensuring that the principle of inclusivity is part of all educational programs, and we remind children of their right to inclusive education, and this also includes children with disabilities in educational facilities. Inclusive education is something that is real, and we look at respect, at diversity in school curricula, and also there are different projects that reflect the values of tolerance and cooperation. These programs encourage children with disabilities to participate in different programs, whether it's sports programs or others, and we hold different conferences related to awareness raising for parents of children with disabilities, and we organized regional and international events. For example, a conference on inclusive education was held in order to ensure that education is adapted to persons with disabilities. We have also participated in international and regional initiatives. We participated in a day related to the Down syndrome and the Gulf states Day on Autism and Difficulties Related to Education. Now I'd like to give the floor to the representative of the Ministry of Justice. As far as the Supreme Council of the Magistrates is concerned, we work with persons with disabilities, and we are convinced that we have to ensure adequate training of magistrate and lawyers on this issue. We have a code of conduct for the judiciary, and it includes provisions of the convention, because this is very important for the work of the judiciary. In order to translate these principles in practice, our council organizes training in order to ensure a better understanding of international conventions on human rights, including this convention, while ensuring that they understand what access to justice means, what non-discrimination means, and what equality means. We have memorandums of understanding with international organizations, different legal academies, and the Center of Artificial Intelligence of UNODC, the Syracuse Institute for Justice, and all of this to understand better understanding of to the judiciary, and also judicial authorities should and are encouraged to respect the equality of persons with disabilities before the law. Also, different institutions carry out public awareness activities, working closely with regional and international partners in order to ensure that there's a respect of the rights of persons with disabilities through an approach that is based on the law. You asked about the number of magistrates who have benefited from this training, and say that there are more than 50 of them, and there's also a national strategy in order to ensure that all members of the legal professions are trained in this area. You talked about awareness raising in the social area, and I give the floor to my colleague.
بسم الله. وفيما يتعلق بالجهود المبذولة في إذكاء الوعي، أود أن
Now, in terms of efforts related to awareness raising, we have carried out public awareness campaigns, and all of this contributed to improving the positive attitude towards persons with disabilities, to combat stereotypes. So our society now accepts persons with disabilities without any forms of discriminations. Now we have a completely different outlook. Before, persons with disabilities only worked in certain areas, and today the vision has changed. We have shown that where there is reasonable accommodation and assistance to persons with disabilities, they can work in different professions.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to give the floor to the Mr. Abdelmajni Makni about Article 31, 32, 33.
شكرا. أنا سأكون سؤالي بسيط.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a very quick question so that we can continue to raise other questions. I know that we have asked a whole raft of questions, but I'd like to know about the support given to the National Human Rights Council. Is the Council independent as it should be? So I'm talking about the National Human Rights Institution. This institution must be in line with the Paris Principles. One of the principles relates to empowerment and independence. I would like to know whether this institution is independent. Does the state intervene in the appointment of members of the institution? And if there is intervention, that means then that it isn't independent. That's my first question. I have another question that I would like to ask of you, namely the participation of civil society in the National Human Rights Institution. This is one of the principles which must be upheld. There must be inputs from a number of institutions, including organizations representing persons with disabilities. I would like to know whether these organizations take part in the work of the National Human Rights Institute, and how do you ensure that the institute is diverse? Thank you very much, says the head of delegation. I'd like to give the floor to the National Human Rights Institute, because this is an independent one. You have the floor. To the representative of the National Human Rights Institute.
طبعا السؤال خارج عن موضوعنا اليوم، لكن اللجنة الوطنية لحقوق الإنسان.
Now, this issue isn't in line with what we do today. However, the National Human Rights Institute is independent. We have our own specific status. Now, we have contributions, and as regards the progress made, that's all I can tell you, really. I'd like to reaffirm that our institute is independent. The government does not intervene in our affairs when it comes to the appointment or the selection of the members of our National Human Rights Institute.
بسيط. هل يتم اختيار الأعضاء أم
Well, my question is a simple, straightforward one. Are the members selected or are they elected? I'd like to know how the members of the National Human Rights Institute are appointed. Is there an election or a selection process? When we talk about independence, there are tools with regard to independence which are set forth in the Paris Principles. I'd like you to mention those to us, even if quite briefly, so that we can be sure that the National Human Rights Institute is in fact independent. This is an extremely important issue for us. When we talk about support given to the National Rights Institute, who provides that support? Who is supporting the National Human Rights Institute? Thank you. The head of delegation. As regards our official response, I would like to say that the National Human Rights Institute is independent and there is no oversight mechanism in place. The National Human Rights Institute has an administrative and financial structure which enables it to carry out its activities independently, and this is in accordance with Decree 17 of 2017. The first article of this decree relates to the independent legal personality of the Institute, and Article 4 states that this institute conducts its activities in full independence. This is the information that we have garnered from the website of the National Rights Institute, and the representative of the Institute is present here with us and can further elaborate on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abdelmajid Makni. Will you give the question 33? Yeah. No. So Article 31 and 32. Will you give the question? Article 31 and 32 is your article. Will you give the question?
The coming person who take
But on the schedule, you are the first. Yes, Mr. Muhammad Alger, you have the floor. Question about Article 9.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. شكرا جزيلا سيدة الرئيسة.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank the Qatari delegation, and I'd like to bid a warm welcome to them. The committee has worked on the basis of a clear-cut approach. I will ask questions and I will await the answers so that we have a direct dialogue. I'd like to ask my first question now. The 2025 law is a step forward. We have an article on the principles of rights, and we use the expression without prejudice to other laws. Here, I would like to ask what this actually means. Without prejudice to other laws. Does this mean that if another law is contradictory to the law on persons with disabilities, that it's this law that takes precedence? This is an important legal point that we are going to base our dialogue on when it comes to the following articles. And I'll start out with Article 10. If I have time, I'd like to come back to Article 9. The criminal code in Qatar, just like other Arab codes, mentions the death penalty. And there are up to 25 to 30 crimes which can be punished with the death penalty. As far as I'm concerned, the use of the death penalty has a number of consequences. Article 279 states that someone who rapes a woman without her consent or who has sexual relations with her without her consent can be subject to the death penalty. Now, this can also apply to servants working within the family with whom one has had sexual relations. So here we're talking about the death penalty which is applied. And I would like to ask a question here. When it comes to persons with disabilities, for which the death penalty is imposed, I would like to know how many people have had the death penalty imposed upon them and in how many cases has this been applied. So I would like to receive the answers and then I'll move on to ask my further questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. يرجى بيان التدابير المتخذة لوقف لموضوع ما يتعلق.
We will discuss the measures taken related to the death penalty, and I'd like to give the floor to the Ministry of the Interior. You have the floor. Representative of the Ministry of the Interior.
العميد سعد سالم الدوسري مساعد مدير إدارة حقوق الإنسان بوزارة الداخلية. تقتصر عقوبة الإعدام.
I work within the Ministry of the Interior. The death penalty is applied to a restricted number of very serious crimes. And we have legal safeguards which guarantee an equitable, equal trial, and this in line with international standards. When it comes to persons with disabilities, I would like to say that the death penalty has not been handed down. National legislation contains guarantees which protect persons with disabilities throughout the criminal proceeding. The criminal code states that the death penalty cannot be applied if the person is unaware of the acts committed. Therefore, persons with disabilities are protected so that their dignity and their individual situation are protected in all stages of the criminal proceedings. Thank you very much indeed for your answer. I wish to restate that the number of crimes for which the death penalty can be applied is quite high. The criminal code does not mention the mitigating circumstances when a disability is involved.
Article 9. Now your question is to the second clusters.
I have from 9 to 14. I want to ask the most important. They are all important, but I will ask about 9 at the end. المادة 11 الخاصة بالأزمات.
Article 11 on states of emergency or crises. Does Qatar have a specific strategy to deal with emergencies? The chair interrupts.
We still in the cluster 1. So please focus on your question about the Article 9 accessibility.
Like the break or the questions for the committee after that, you mean? Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay. طيب نسأل عن مادة 9 وأنا آسف اللي عملت هاي
So, Article 9. My apologies for having misunderstood. It is quite clear that Qatar has made significant strides forward, and these are quite praiseworthy when it comes to access to technology and digitalization. However, there's also a problem when it comes to the implementation of laws related to accessibility. I would like to know what mechanisms the state has adopted to monitor the accessibility process and accessibility standards. What punishment is meted out against all parties who do not uphold accessibility standards, whether this be during the design or implementation stage?
حول إفادة اللجنة.
I'll give the floor to the Ministry of Social Affairs on accessibility standards. Mona, you have the floor.
منى رئيسي مساعد مدير إدارة الرعاية.
I am Mona Raisi from the Ministry of Social Affairs. The Ministry of Social Development and the Family is tasked with coordinating policies and programs which pertain to cooperation with other ministries. And the aim here is to identify accessibility standards and ensure their implementation. Article 25 of the Law on Persons with Disabilities stipulates that competent authorities must participate in all plans at the design and construction phase, the construction of buildings, public transport, and communication means, including IT. Persons with disabilities must be able to have access to these, and this access must be unhindered. The law also states that the competent authorities which provide public services must guarantee reasonable accommodation in all places where public services are provided, so that persons with disabilities can have access to them without difficulty. In addition, the law provides for non-governmental authorities as well. That is why the Family Authority, together with other stakeholders, coordinates all policies to organize the activities.
حكيت احنا القانون بالتأكيد حافظين
The law has been reviewed very closely by the committee, but my question is as follows. How are the parties punished? And these are the parties who do not uphold and respect Law 25. What are the punishment or sanctions that are applied?
إذا تسمح لي بس بالإجابة على هذا السؤال.
May I provide a response myself, so as to ensure that our legislation is in line with accessibility standards? A fine which does not exceed 5,000 Qatari riyals is applied to all persons who do not uphold Article 25 of Law 25. This means that lawmakers are committed to the clear implementation of laws on disability. Mr. Mohanad. Your Excellency, what is the authority which monitors implementation and imposes the fine? I give the floor to the Speaker now. Thank you, Madam Chair. When it comes to accessibility means and accessibility standards, Law 25 has taken them into account. The authorities which supervise the implementation of the law and impose fines are governmental authorities. The law itself guarantees the implementation of sanctions when any provisions of Law 25 are breached. Qatari lawmakers are simply not happy with sanctioning individuals and persons, but also provide for sanctions to natural persons such as companies, businesses, when they commit breaches or contraventions against persons with disabilities. To reply to your question, sir, on the death penalty now, to provide some additional information to what my colleague has already said, I can state
include Article 9 ساعتك ويمكن لأنه الرئيسة طلبت إنه مادة 10 كان لازم تكون.
Mr. Mohanad, thank you very much for discussing the death penalty, but I think that we now need to focus on Article 9. Based on what I've understood in Article 9, there is legislation in force, but there's no oversight mechanism unless a complaint is brought before a court. There, I would recommend that you implement the law and that you task a specific, for example, if finished with my question.
الرقابة كما ذكرت قبل قليل.
As regards monitoring or oversight, our public prosecution service is implementing laws, particularly in the criminal sphere. If offences are committed against persons with disabilities or others, complaints can be lodged through the channels made available by the state. The state has authorized a number of means to lodge a complaint, whether it be, well, directly or electronically. And the Ministry of the Interior ensures that the complaint is lodged correctly and also ensures that the procedure is upheld. This is a procedure that is required to lodge a complaint. At all stages of the procedure, the specific needs of persons with disabilities are taken into account in ensuring reasonable accommodation to facilitate their access to the various institutions where a complaint can be brought. or in fact digital means. In addition, Decree of Law 25, this decree will have a number of monitoring mechanisms for implementation. With respect to access, lawmaker, and this is an important issue of social affairs and other ministries. The government, therefore, is fully taking on its role, as well as citizens themselves, to ensure that all obstacles are removed and to ensure that persons with disabilities have access to their rights. Mr. Mahanan, excuse me. I think we've discussed this question at length, which is very much widespread in our countries. We know that the Public Prosecution Service monitors the lodging of complaints. That's not exactly what I meant. I wanted to mention a monitoring mechanism.
Would you send about the Article 31 and 32?
أنا لدي سؤالين، سؤال يهم المادة 31، سؤال يهم المادة 31 وهو كالتالي: ما هي
On Article 31, what are the instruments and the mechanisms that were adopted by Qatar to detect and supervise everything that relates to disability? For example, whether the Washington instruments are applied in order to collect the greatest possible volume of information related to disabilities. Article 32. Article 32 involves civil society during international cooperation. For example, we